In this lecture, we're going to learn how to create a bibliography and use citations and references in a LaTeX document. We want to start by creating a bibliography file, or a bib file. So I'm going to open my LaTeX editor, create a new document, and I'm going to save this in my Lecture 12 folder. And here I don't want to save it as a text file. This is going to be a bibliography or a bib file. So I need to go down here to File Format and find something that says bib or LaTeX bib so that I can save this as a bib file. In my case it said tex bib file. Yours might just say bib. And we'll call this Lecture 12. And we see the .bib extension. We're saving this in folder Lecture 12. So in a bib file, you will create bib items for all of the different types of literature you want to reference in your article. One type of literature is, in fact, an article. So I use the article tag. Starts with @ followed by article. And then I want to open this with a curly brace. And then I'm also going to close with a curly brace, but in this case I'm going to include a lot of additional lines between those braces. So I put them on separate lines. The first thing you might want to put for your article is an author. So I'll say author, and I'm just going to make something up here. And we'll assume that this article has multiple authors. And when you have multiple authors, you separate them with the word and. So I have Bill Hall and James Jones and Mark Todd. Of course, there's a title to my article. We'll just say it's called A Good Article. Note that I'm putting this in quotes and following each line with a comma. This article appears in a journal, and the journal is called Computer. Now some of these tags are optional, but you'll see later that we're going to run BibTeX, and if you've left off some of the optional tags, you might see a warning. So you want to include as much information as you have about the literature that you're citing. So here we'll make up a volume number. And a number. So oftentimes literature articles in a particular journal will have a volume and a number. So I've included both of those. You always want to put the pages for the article you're referencing, and of course the year. Notice in my last tag, I do not put a comma as this ends the bib item, but I do have the closing curly brace. So I can double check that for each of these lines on the right hand side of the equals, I have some text in quotes followed by a comma, with the comma missing on the last one, and then the curly brace to end the bib item. Another bib item you might want to include is a book. These different types of bib items actually have different tags that they take. Some of them are the same, but some are different. Of course, a book will have an author, so I'll have an author tag. In this case, we'll just list a single author. Remember the comma at the end. Pages means something different when you're citing a book, and pages is the number of pages in the book. So we'll make something up there. A book has a publisher. We'll make up a fictitious pubco. Usually has a location where the publisher is located, so we'll just say city, state. And then of course the title. We'll call this a super book. And finally the year. Now the order that I'm putting these in doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you have your commas and quotes where they need to be to get your syntax correct for that entire bib item. And finally, another thing that I often want to cite is a URL. A lot of information we find today is on the internet and not necessarily published in print anywhere. So one way to create a URL citation is to use the miscellaneous tag, MISC, and we'll give this a title. And let's use the LaTeX website. And I believe that website is titled LaTeX, a document preparation system, comma. Now we want the URL to actually appear in our list of references, and one way to get that done is to use the How Published tag. So How Published, one word, all lowercase. And here we can put a URL. Normally I would copy and paste this to make sure I don't make a typo, but here I'm going to type it and hope that I don't make any mistakes. I'm going to make this the last entry for this bib item, so I won't put a comma over after How Published, but I will put the closing brace. Now for each one of these bib items that you've created, you're going to want a way to reference this bib item from your LaTeX document, and you do that by creating a key for each bib item. I have a convention that I use where I use the author's last name followed by the year, and then we'll put a comma after that. You can come up with your own convention. Whatever key you make is entirely up to you, but it should be something that you can readily recognize, as you'll see later when we're typing our tex file that's associated with this bib file. Now here I didn't put an author, so I'm just going to say LaTeX for my key. Alright, at this point I'm done with my bib file. I'm going to save it, and now I want to create a LaTeX file that actually uses this bib file. So I'll go back to TextShop and File New. I'm going to save this. I'm already in my Lecture 12 folder, so I want to save this as lecture12.tex, so this will be a regular tex file. And now I want to create a document. So in retrospect, I probably should have started with my template that I've been using, but I'll go ahead and type just the basic tags we want here. Document class, article. I always use package. Margin equals 1. And the geometry package. For the title here, I'll call this an article with citations. Of course, the author is myself, and I don't want a date. So I'll begin the document, then put my end tag so I don't forget it. And make title. So in the first section, the introduction to my new document, I'll say this article is about citations. And then in the subsequent sentences, I'm actually going to create a citation. So I'll say, I read a good book, and now I want to cite this book at the end of this sentence. So I'm going to use the tilde again like we did with references when we were doing figures, tables. And instead of the ref tag, I'm going to use a special tag called cite. So /cite. And then in curly braces, I'll use that key we talked about in the bib file. So I believe Smith 2012 was the key I used for the book that I read. I'll also say I read a good article, tilde, /cite. And here, Hall 2013 is the key that I used for the article I put in my bib file. And finally, I like to use LaTeX, tilde /cite, and my key there was LaTeX. All right, so now I've cited the 3 items that I put in my bib file. Now I need to include that bib file in this document. So I'm going to create another section, and I'm actually going to call this section References, because I want my references to appear in a section that has a header called References. To get LaTeX to find the bib items that I created in my bib file, I'm going to use a tag called bibliography. And after the bibliography tag, I'm simply going to put the name, without the extension, of my bib file, which is Lecture 12. Another tag I want to include is bibliography style. There are a number of different styles you can use. Plain is a very simple style to create a bibliography, so we use plain here. And at this point I want to typeset my document. When I typeset, my console showed me an error. So let's see if we can find where this error is. It's in the geometry.sty, illegal unit of measure. So let's go back to our tex file. Oh, I see here where I said use package geometry. Margin should include a unit of measure after the 1. So we'll typeset that again. And this time it ran. This created a PDF file. But you'll see in the PDF file that everywhere I had a citation, there's a question mark. If I go back to my console, I see a series of LaTeX warnings that the citation was undefined, and a final warning that there were undefined references. This is telling me that LaTeX still does not know where to find those bib items that I created. So the next thing I need to do then is actually run BibTeX on this file. Now that I've run LaTeX, I can change that option to BibTeX, typeset again, and this is actually going to read the bib file that I created. And I'll see the console output from reading that bib file. I see a warning that says in order to sort, we need the author or key in that LaTeX bib item that I created. So the plain bibliography style that we're using wants to sort all of the references based on author. But of course, if we go back to our bib file, we didn't include an author here. So it's just giving me a warning saying I'm not going to be able to sort that one because you didn't include an author. Now that I've ran bib, if I go back and look at, if I can find it here, my files that are generated, I see a file called BBL. So that's a new file we didn't see before. BBL is the output of running bib. or BibTeX on a bib file. So here's my bib file. I ran BibTeX. That gave me a BBL file. Now, if I run LaTeX again, LaTeX is going to read that BBL file. And again, I see that I still have question marks here for the references. However, I also see that each of my references is now included in alphabetical order, of course with LaTeX at the top because I didn't have an author here. But I'm still missing the actual citation. So if I go look at my console, I see the LaTeX warning labels may have changed to rerun, as we've seen before. So I'll typeset LaTeX again, go back to my console, the warnings are gone, and I can go back to my article, and I can now see that the actual number of the citation lines up with the reference that was put at the bottom of the page. So notice that although my references are ordered alphabetically, my citations are still properly numbering, pointing to the right reference. And this is incredibly useful, especially when you start moving text around your document and you're citing things from different places and in different orders. You don't want to have to keep track of that numbering. So as long as you're citing things based on whatever tag you gave it, LaTeX will handle the numbering for you. So creating your own bib file can be tedious and take some time. There are a number of tools that will allow you to export your references in BibTeX format. And in the next lecture, we'll look at the tool that I use called Mendeley.